then, as you are proceeding towards actually exiting the body, that vibration may be raised higher in order to, make it possible for the spirit to detach from the body. People will go out of their body in different ways. Some people do it with thought. Some people roll out. Some people, kind of just have some assistance from spiritual guardians that are around them that help them to lift out the first times. There's a process that occurs, though, as you proceed through these experiences, where you will proceed to higher and higher realms of knowledge. And so the process will change dramatically over the years, depending on what you're called to do and what you are being drawn into. But that is usually how people will experience it in the beginning.
Okay. And after you've been having it for a long time, I mean, can you actually invoke going into an out-of-body on your own?
Well, the way I would put it, it's not that you're doing it on your own, but that you know how to be in a state of preparedness to receive it, so to speak. So there are people who will do it of their own accord. My own recommendation has always been that you want to allow the higher power of the universe to guide your traveling, because you don't know what you don't know. So we as human beings are going to tend to be very limited in what we might seek or ask for. And what the universe has to show us is almost always going to be much more astounding than what we could even think up. So we're going to think up things that are very trivial and minimal in comparison. And so, now what I would do, I do a lot of practices with meditation and prayer and things like this. And I have a lot of things that I do around my home to create a vibrational atmosphere that makes it easier for these experiences to occur. And by doing so, then, I am allowing the universe to work through my body and my soul and bring these things about. But I've always allowed, and I really always highly recommend, allowing a higher power of the universe to guide the journeys, because we don't have a clue what is out there for us until we do that. Because there is so much more than what is commonly known or what is commonly perceived to actually be achieved in these realms. There are an infinite number of higher realms, an infinite number of lower realms, and an infinite number of mortal realms. We're not talking about traveling like through one dimension or two dimensions or three or four. We're talking about infinitesimal levels of dimensions. So in order for us to really fully comprehend, we have to put ourselves under the guidance of teachers. And, interestingly enough, as you proceed through the journeying in the out-of-body travel state, you'll find that there is a process that most people do go through, and my books go into this in great detail, which is, how we actually begin to undergo evolution of the spirit and work through issues in the soul, work through the issues that we have come to this mortal realm to work through, and attain to higher and higher vibrational states. And what happens in this process is that you're going to have different guardian angels, you're going to have different teachers, spiritual guardians throughout the journey. So the teachers that you have in the beginning are possibly going to start by teaching you about oneness, but then you're going to start moving towards a whole plethora of different types of spiritual guardians and guidance that you're going to receive from many different sources as you proceed through these evolutionary spheres. And it's just impossible to guess. The only way to do it is to have a certain level of surrendering to the universe bringing to you what you need in that given moment to learn.
Interesting. Now, can I ask you a question? One of the guests I had on out-of-body time travel says you could actually go back and change things in your life. Is that possible, or have you been able to do that?
Well, what I have experienced is that there are many corridors and tunnels that you will experience in out-of-body travel. So there are some that will take you into the initiation rites. There are some that will take you into higher or lower realms. But there's also what is known as the time tunnel. And the time tunnel, you can travel backwards and forwards in time. And I've had many experiences and journeys where I've been taken into previous time periods, future time periods, parallel time periods, to make alterations in situations. I don't recall ever doing that for changing something in my current life now. Now, as to what they're saying, that would be interesting because I think it's possible, because what can happen is you're going to go in there and do when you're in the out-of-body travel state, you're working with what I call the management realm. The management realm contains all the thoughts and the actions that are leading towards what's going to happen on the ground based on what energy is being put out. And so this is sometimes, ironically, what a lot of psychics will touch into is the management realm. This is also partly why the perception of a psychic can be slightly off at times, because the management realm can still be altered. It hasn't hit the ground yet. So, yes, someone could definitely travel back in time, go back into this management realm, and alter something as an outcome in their own life. I've never been drawn to do that or guided to do that. I have had thousands of experiences where I have been drawn in to do that for other souls. And so we go in and we alter something that might hit the ground and might significantly damage, like the destiny or purpose of a particular individual. Sometimes we call it their program. If someone's making just a bad mistake, or they have a danger in their path and they're not aware of it, and they need some, this is where guardian angels come in, but it's also much more than just guardian angels. There's a whole spiritual system in place to help with altering realities in those realms before they hit the ground. And so that can actually be done.
Interesting. Now, also going out of body, travel and stuff like that, traveling to like parallel universes. Have you done that often?
Going into parallel universes?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. The interesting thing in the out-of-body travel state is that you will find that there are actually multiple, I would say, minimum, 15 or 20 different lines of destiny that your current life can actually be playing out in parallel dimensions. But the parallel realities go well beyond that, because even just when you are leaving your body, when you enter into the spiritual awareness, you're going to see, for instance, the way that your room might appear in the physical sphere, you will see it how it appears in the astral sphere, and there will be differences. Sometimes I've had times where they've actually almost like rolled this circular device where you're seeing all the infinite possibilities. You might see 20 or 30 possibilities of how this is manifesting in 15 or 20 different parallel realities. But parallel realities goes well beyond what we're seeing here. So we have many different possible lifelines from the one that we're living in right now that could be playing out in parallels. But we also have the parallel realities that occur with higher dimensional beings and lower dimensional beings. And this is one of the things that I think people are misunderstanding about what we're seeing come to the surface these days, because a lot of, like, for instance, the extraterrestrials, they're coming in on a lot of these different interdimensional portals that are really parallel to our own. Not all of them, but many of them are. And so what we're not realizing is that we have these worlds that are overlapping, but we just haven't been aware of them until maybe more recently, except for, we have had prophets, saints, mystics, and sages from, thousands of years who have been aware of certain things like these. But as a humanity, we're starting to come forward and recognizing that existence is much bigger than what we see in front of us through our physical three-dimensional eyes. And so we are now dealing with understanding multidimensional existence because it does overlap and parallel everything we do.
Interesting. So, in other words, that some of these ETs can actually being crossed over into our world from another type of world system, what you're saying. Is simple words, yes.
Yes, and like for instance, with the extraterrestrials, excuse me, you have some beings that we know have physical characteristics, like the Greys and the reptilians, and there's praying mantis things. We hear about different manifestations that people have seen that are physical. But there are also these other extraterrestrials that are primarily interdimensional, and that would go with the Pleiadians, and then there's other races. There are two specific races that I like to talk about because I was given, really, really honored to be given the opportunity in both of their cases to experience what their vibration and what their level of evolution is, which is so far beyond us that it's really impossible to put it into words. But these particular two races are races that are here only for the purpose of spiritual evolution of the human soul. Many of the other races have other purposes here as well. The Pleiadians have a great deal to do here with the spiritual evolution as well, but there's also other purposes mixed with that. The other beings like the Greys, the reptilians, they're mortal beings, which means that they're just simply looking to fulfill needs that they have. And, just as it's not that much different from, Christopher Columbus discovering America, it's going to be similar to this. We have other races that are coming in who are physical, who have physical needs, mortal needs, it's just going to be like that. They're going to have remnants of both good and evil within them. They're not, just purely enlightened beings. These two species that I'm talking about are not of that nature at all. These are pure light beings that come from very distant star planets, and they come through interdimensionally. The first ones that I saw them in the Himalayan mountains, in a mystical experience. I've never been there physically. And what they showed me was that their vibration is so high, they've only been able to make contact with 5 incarnate human souls. The reason for this is that their vibration is so far beyond us that most of us, we're just not prepared for it. And we need to prepare for it. And so they were showing me how important it was for us to become receptive to their thrust. And what their thrust is that they implant within our spirit energetic elements that will help us to move further and go towards evolution rather than standing still, which is a lot of what the problem has been for the human soul. We have to look at the human soul when we're talking about the out-of-body travel experience. The other race, also from a very distant planet, but interdimensional light beings. These are extraterrestrials, and what they allowed me to do was I was embraced by the entity, and as I did so, I melted into him, and it was like we switched places for a moment. I was allowed to travel to his world, and he kind of held my place here in this one while I did so to speak. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful, such a highly loving, such a highly evolved place. I really didn't want to return. When I came back, I was just so in awe of it and so honored to have been allowed to experience it. But, he did share with me that was all I could handle at that time. Because, again, we as human beings we need to, work towards being more and more able to receive from these higher thrusts. And what happens is that because we generally operate from such a physical dimension of existence, it becomes hard for the assistance from the higher places to actually